The rhythmic percussion against the Vagrant's deck plates wasn't a simple clank. It was a jagged, metallic stutter, like a giant arthritic attempt at tap dance. Sullivan Hale knew its language without opening his eyes. The ship's chronometer might label it the third watch, but to him, it was just another clanking Tuesday. On the Vagrant, such sounds meant the portside atmospheric recycler was having another existential crisis. His personal comm chime, a polite, insistent chirp. "Sullivan, you awake down there?" Captain Aaron Corville's voice was crisp, laced with the frayed tension of someone who'd stared at dwindling profit margins for 3 hours straight. Sullivan grunted, rolling on his thin bunk. Define awake, breathing, preferably with cognitive function. "Get to the bridge. The ship is composing a new symphony, and I dislike the tempo. I prefer predictable silence. On my way." He swung his legs out, the worn fabric of his jumpsuit a familiar, comforting weight. Ground-in grease around the knees and cuffs had bonded with the material through years of percussive maintenance and sheer stubbornness. He scraped a hand through hair that considered a comb an act of excessive optimism and headed into the corridor. The Vagrant was a relic from an era when freighter design prioritized durability over crew comfort or acoustics that didn't resemble a washing machine full of wrenches. Corville kept it flying through sharp deals and sharper wits. Sullivan kept it flying with salvage parts, inspired profanity, and an intimate understanding of which panels required a specific tool versus a well-aimed thump. He found the captain on the bridge, a utilitarian space dominated by the main viewer's star-streaked swirl, a slipstream. Corville stood with arms folded, tapping a console, her features stark in the oscillating glow of a dozen status displays. Tor, the ship's cassowary pilot, sat at the helm, his form a dense aggregate of smaller, stony organisms. Thick, articulated tendrils emerged from his main mass, resting on controls with surprising delicacy. His sheer bulk made the pilot's chair seem a toy. The clanking was louder here, a persistent, grating heartbeat. "Morning," Sullivan rasped, his voice rough with sleep. "It's become a metronome," Corville stated, not taking her eyes from a flickering diagnostic screen. "It's keeping time for a funeral march." "Identify it." Sullivan closed his eyes, listening past the obvious noise to the ship's deeper language. The hum of the power conduits, the whisper of life support, the subharmonic groan of the aging frame. Port recycler. The main cog and primary filter assembly are out of true. He opened his eyes. "Tor, cycle the port atmospheric vent." On my mark. The Kasari's massive form dipped in a slow, measured nod, a geological event of agreement. Mark. A new, deeper alarm joined the clanking as Tor manipulated controls. The noise hitched, stuttered, then spiraled into a faster, more frantic rhythm. "Yep," Sullivan confirmed, mostly to himself. Sheared tooth on the transfer gear. "It's sending a shudder right through the intake manifold." He turned to Corville. "I can fix it." "How long?" 10 minutes. Give or take the time to find the right wrench or the right persuasion. "Good. And Sullivan?" She turned, her gaze direct and unyielding. "We have a passenger. Please try to keep the technical finesse to a minimum." He paid a significant premium for a quiet, uneventful trip. A low groan escaped Sullivan. He'd forgotten about the academic, some xenoanthropologist who booked last-minute passage to the rim, a man with delicate-looking cases, now taking up space in the cargo hold. Right, the doctor. I'll be the soul of discretion. He headed for the engineering deck, already mentally inventorying his toolkit. The access panel, as predicted, refused to budge. A thin film of rust and 20 years of thermal cycling had fused it to the bulkhead. He gave it a light tug, then a firm one. The plate stayed stubbornly sealed. "All right," he sighed, setting down his toolkit with a soft clatter. "You asked for it." He retrieved the 3-pound mallet. He considered it a beautiful tool. Its heavy steel head was polished from use. The dark, worn hickory handle perfectly fitted to the shape of his grip. He called it the negotiator. He tapped the panel's top corner, listened to the pitch, then the bottom. He found the dead spot, the place where the metal was under maximum tension. He swung. The resulting bang was profound, a sound of pure impactful authority that sent a satisfying shudder up his arm. The panel shivered and popped open an inch. Inside, the errant cog continued its discordant rhythm, oblivious. "Resolve the problem with technical finesse," he murmured, grabbing a pry bar. He was just jimmying the cog back into alignment when Corville's voice came up with personal calm. "Sullivan, report." "Almost done." Just applied some calibrated percussive persuasion. A moment of dead air. Then Corville spoke, her voice tinny with calm static. "I heard it on the bridge. It sounded like you dropped an engine block. And that," Sullivan said smoothly, giving the cog a final, precise twist or wrench, "was the calibration part." The clanking ceased, replaced instantly by the gentle, obedient hum of a functioning life support system. "All quiet now." "Good. When you're finished, our passenger is in the mess. Go introduce yourself. And for star's sake, try to get the grease off your face." Sullivan wiped a hand across his cheek, then looked at the black smear on his knuckles. Too late. He found the Neutrix in the small mess hall, hunched over a table. He was tall, his limbs long and slender, with remarkably articulated fingers. A smooth integument resembling dark, polished ironwood covered his body. He was polishing a small, multicolored cube with silk cloth, each wipe slow and considered. "You the doctor?" Sullivan asked, leaning against the doorframe. The Neutrix looked up. His eyes, dark and polished as jet, were set in a narrow, expressionless face. He unfolded himself to his full height, a good 2.5 meters. "I am Dr. Elon Varus, Senior Fellow of Pre-Contact Intelligence Metrics at the University of Praxis, lead researcher for the Varus Protocol for Cognitive Assessment." The words flowed in a smooth, rehearsed cadence. "And you are—" "Sullivan, the engineer." He walked over to the coffee machine, which gurgled ominously. He gave its side a gentle, knowing pat. "Ah, the mechanic." Varus gestured with a long finger hand toward the collection of objects on the table. "These are my research instruments. A curated collection of artifacts used to quantify the problem-solving capacity of nascent species." Sullivan glanced over. The colored cube, a twisted loop of metal, a slate filled with grids of unfamiliar symbols. It looked like the contents of a particularly pretentious junk drawer. "Fascinating," he said, tapping the coffee machine again. "Indeed, I require a specific, stable power allocation for my analysis equipment. I filed the necessary paperwork. A continuous output of 2.8 terajoules per standard day, with a maximum variance of 0.01% as per galactic Concord regulations." Sullivan coaxed a stream of dark liquid from the machine. It tasted faintly of recycled coolant and profound chemical bitterness. "Doc, this ship's power grid is a series of strongly worded suggestions held together by optimism and conductive sealant tape. I can give you a dedicated line. It'll be mostly stable. That's the best I can do." The joints in Varus's tall frame emitted a series of sharp, dry clicks, an irritated sound. "Mostly stable is not a quantifiable metric. My work depends on exactitude." "My work," Sullivan countered, taking a sip, "depends on this ship holding together. You'll get your power. Just don't panic if it flickers when I turn on the toaster." He left the doctor sputtering about regulations and protocol. That evening, the four of them gathered in the mess. Tor was steadily absorbing a block of compressed mineral lichen, pressing it against an intake patch on his side. Corville reviewed a cargo manifest on her data slate. Sullivan was enjoying a surprisingly edible stew. Dr. Varus picked up the colored cube, holding it aloft as if it were a holy relic. "Behold," he announced, "the chromatic recursion prism. A truly remarkable artifact." Corville looked up, a hint of a smile on her lips. "It looks like a child block." "A common misconception, Captain. Its internal mechanics operate on principles of layered permutation. Each face comprises 9 independently rotating tiles. The quantity of possible states would take a standard supercomputer millennia to catalog." He paused, looking at each of them. Solving from an arbitrary state is a matter of infinitesimal chance without a deep, structural understanding. He offered the cube to Tor, who took it. One of the Kasari's tendrils curled around it. The composite digits were surprisingly deft. The intricate puzzle looked absurdly tiny in his grasp. He turned it over slowly, then handed it to Corval. She twisted a face. The cube made a sharp click. She twisted another. So it's a lockbox where the key is hidden in its own design. An elegant metaphor, Captain. Varys beamed. A test of raw, contextless intelligence. Corval fiddled with it for another minute, her brow furrowed, before losing interest. She slid it across the table towards Sullivan, who was getting up to refill his coffee. Here, you like fixing broken things. His hands, callous and sure, took the cube without thought. The weight was familiar, the plastic smooth under his thumbs. His mind was elsewhere, on the leaky coolant line in Bay 2, the aft thruster alignment. The strange harmonic the comms array had developed. Twist click, turn click. His fingers fell into an old, deep rhythm, a sequence learned in a bored childhood during a 6-month haul. Left face up, top face clockwise, right face down. It was autonomic, like tying a bootlace. He reached the coffee pot, the cube's colors shifting in a rapid, blurring cascade in his hands. He set his mug down, gave the cube one final definitive twist. A soft, final click echoed in the quiet room. He placed a solid cube on the table beside Varys's plate. All 6 faces were perfect, solid blocks of color. He turned to pour his coffee. The only sound was the ship's low, environmental hum. Sullivan turned back, mug in hand. Tor was staring, utterly still. Corval's grin was wide and triumphant. Varys was frozen, his mouth slightly agape. The smooth, wood-like grain of his skin seemed to tighten, losing its luster, growing dull and dry. Sullivan took a sip. What? It's a kid's toy. There's a trick to it. You learn the patterns for the corners and edges. Takes a few minutes once you get the hang of it. Varys made a small, choking sound. He looked from the pristine cube to Sullivan's grease-stained hands and back. But the delayed permutation, the astronomical permutations. Yeah, Sullivan said. There's a lot, but it's just a pattern. Corval leaned back, her grin fixed. Well, Doctor, it appears you found an exceptionally nascent intelligence right here on my ship. Tor rumbled, a low seismic chuckle that shook his frame. Just as the Kasari's laughter subsided, a piercing klaxon blared through the ship, an insistent, screaming shriek. Crimson emergency lights flashed, washing the mess in strokes of panic. What now? Corval was on her feet, already moving. Proximity alert. Tor boomed, heaving himself toward the bridge with surprising speed. Sullivan followed. The forgotten cube lying solved and silent on the table. On the bridge, the viewer had replaced the slipstream swirl with a solid, shimmering wall of gray energy. It pulsed like a diseased heart. Report. Corval snapped, strapping herself into the command chair. Massive object, undocumented, appeared directly in our path, Tor stated, his tendrils flying over controls. Subspace distortion is off the scale. Attempting evasive maneuvers. Controls are sluggish. Something is pulling us in. A deep resonant hum, more felt than heard, vibrated through the deck plates. It was older and more powerful than the Vagrant's own engines. The lights flickered, died, and rebooted in dim emergency mode. The main drive sputtered into silence. Outside, the stars vanished. The gray energy field enveloped them completely. A swirling, silent emptiness. Status. Corval demanded. Engines are offline, not responding. Sullivan reported from a secondary console, his fingers tapping a rapid diagnostic rhythm. Main power is fluctuating. Something's got us in a tractor beam, but the energy signature is new. It's reading like a structured pattern, not a natural field. Corval cross-referenced their position with deep archive astro charts. Her face paled. Gods of the deep, she whispered. What? Sullivan asked, not looking up from his console. The Warden Containment Network. She pointed a trembling finger at a faded, mid-tier entry on her screen. Ancient. Pre-Concord. Automated quarantine stations. Most think they're ghost stories to scare rookies. She scanned the fragmentary text, and the blood drained from her face. The logs. They say no ship that enters has ever been logged leaving. A moment later, The gray void on the viewer resolved. A high-resolution hologram flickered into existence in the center of the bridge. A puzzle appeared. Two complex, intertwined shapes of metallic vitreous material, hooked in a jagged, interlocking knot that seemed to defy physics. Beneath them, a thin bar of light appeared and immediately began to shrink. A timer. Dr. Varus rushed onto the bridge, his earlier shock replaced by rapturous awe. Incredible. A true first contact intelligence filter. Observe the geometric purity. This is a universal constant presented as a topological challenge. We must analyze the symbolic language, the cultural implications. Save the lecture, Doc. Corval snapped. The bar is getting shorter. Sullivan tuned him out. He stared at the knot. He'd seen this principle before. A disentanglement puzzle. A cheap, twisted metal version had been in a Christmas stocking once. He'd solved it with patience, then taken pliers to a tougher one. The trick was finding the single, hidden path. Tor, he said, voice low, can you manipulate the hologram? Haptic feedback. The Cassari rumbled an affirmative, his tendrils hovering over a control interface. Okay, follow my lead. Take the left loop. Move it up, straight up through the central ring. Tor's touch was delicate. The holographic loop slid upward. Now, twist it clockwise 90 degrees. There should be a gap in the upper armature of the right piece. I see it, Tor rumbled. Slide it through. Carefully, the image shifted. The left loop passed through an opening that seemed impossible a second before. With a final, elegant twist, the two pieces separated, floating apart harmlessly. The timer vanished. The hologram dissolved. The entire ship lurched forward as if a tether had been cut. The gray emptiness on the screen thinned, revealing the faint, terrifying outlines of massive, silent structure outside, a ring of ancient alloys stretching into darkness. A new hologram flickered to life. This one was more complex. Dr. Varus stared, his integument dull. A form of spatial cavitationism, perhaps? How did you know? Sullivan shrugged, already studying the new puzzle. A 9x9 grid partially filled with alien symbols. My aunt gave me one for Christmas. I used a hammer on the tough one. They had passed the first test. They were only deeper in the trap. The second puzzle symbols resembled numerals from a dozen species. Varus launched into frantic analysis. A numerological cipher. If we can identify the mathematical base, we might decode the underlying pattern, a prime sequence or a stellar constant. His fingers flew over his data slate. Sullivan walked over, looked past the alien glyphs to the grid structure. It's a logic puzzle document, not a math problem. Varus stopped typing. What? A logic puzzle. The symbols are just placeholders. Each row, each column, and each 3x3 block needs one of each symbol, no repeats. He grabbed a stylus. We call it Sudoku back home. See this box? It's missing 3 symbols. This row has 1, this column has another, so this square has to be the third. He worked through the grid with methodical ease, explaining simple elimination. To him, it was no different than tracing a faulty circuit. In under 5 minutes, he had the completed grid. Tor input the solution. The hologram dissolved. Varus was quiet, his voice hushed. Where did you acquire such training in abstract systems? A specialized human academy. Sullivan shook his head. They print them in newspapers. It's something you do waiting for laundry. Dr. Elon Varus, senior fellow of pre-contact intelligence metrics, slowly sat down. The ship lurched forward again, pulling them deeper into the silent, ancient ring. Erin Corval watched the starless gray on the screen, her grip on the command chair white-knuckled. Sullivan, status of the FDL coil. His face appeared on a comm screen, shadowed. Bad news, Captain. This field is accelerating the coil's decay. It was failing before. Now we have maybe 12 hours before it becomes inert or goes critical. Push it and we vaporize. Corval terminated the call. She pulled up the ship's financials. A sea of red. Even escape meant financial ruin. Scrapping the Vagrant was no longer a possibility. It was an inevitability. Tor rumbled, breaking the silence. The station is old. Your point, Tor. All things are power. A station this large, it must have a significant source. Rare materials. Exotic parts. A new expression crossed Corville's face. Despair melted into sharp, calculating avarice. Pre-Concord salvage was the stuff of legends. A single power converter could buy a new ship. She straightened. Sullivan solved 2 of their puzzles. We can solve the rest. She looked at Tor, a fierce light in her eyes. We're not just getting out. We're getting paid. Varys found Sullivan in engineering, surrounded by the guts of a secondary conduit. The air smelled of hot metal and ozone. For a long moment, the Neutrix just watched the human work. Finally, he spoke. Engineer Hale, might I see your puzzle collection? Sullivan blinked, surprised, then shrugged toward a battered footlocker. Knock yourself out. Varys opened it with an archaeologist's reverence. Inside, a dog-eared book of crossword puzzles, a few twisted metal knots, and Sullivan's personal data slate. The Neutrix traced the crossword cover. A linguistic decryption exercise? Crossword. You fill in words from clues. It's a game. A game! He turned on the data slate. A holographic chessboard glowed. And this? A military simulation? Chess. A strategy game. The goal is to trap the opponent's king. Teaches you think ahead, see patterns, sacrifice a position. Sullivan turned back to his work. Humans use games to teach all sorts of things. Varys was silent. My life's work rests on intelligence being a formal, quantifiable, serious pursuit. Frivolity denotes an undeveloped mind. He looked at Sullivan, his expression one profound crisis. Your existence challenges my field's foundation. Sullivan paused. Doc, you think in formulas. I think in wrenches. We're both just trying to see how things work. He gestured to the slate. I'll teach you if you want, when we get out. For the first time, Varys made a small, hesitant gesture that might have been a smile. Another puzzle had appeared and been solved, a complex auditory sequence Sullivan recognized as a distorted blues scale. Each success pulled them deeper. Sullivan stood on the bridge, jaw tight, staring at the gray swirl. Tor turned his great head. You look for the trick, the key. His voice was a low vibration. Varys looks for the rule. The equation. Sullivan grunted. The box, Tor rumbled, dropping to a whisper, is indifferent. It just opens. The simple truth cut through Sullivan's fatigue. He'd been trying to outsmart it. Varys to overwhelm it with theory. Tor was right. The solution was all that mattered. The process was irrelevant. He was an engineer. This was just a broken machine. He nodded. Thanks, Tor. The next puzzle was a holographic chessboard mid-game with a notation. White to mate in 6 moves. Varys stepped forward, energized. He'd studied the rules furiously. A classic tactical problem. The solution requires a precise sequence. He began calculating, mapping decision trees. Sullivan saw the obvious knight fork. Knight to f7. Check. He loses his queen. Negative. Varys countered, his analysis swift. That leads to a forced queen trade and a draw in 12. It is a trap. Sullivan re-examined the board, tracing lines he'd missed. The doctor was right. The puzzle demanded deeper, counterintuitive thinking. He saw it then, a brutal, beautiful line. It's a queen's sacrifice. Varys was stunned. The most powerful piece? That is strategic folly. It's a feint, Sullivan said, his mind clear. You sacrifice to pull his king into the open. It looks like a blunder, but it forces a specific sequence. He walked Tor through it. Queen to g8, check. King takes. Rook to h3, check. A relentless, driving series that cornered the Black King for a final, inescapable strike. Varys ran the simulation. His eyes widened. It is mathematically perfect. They input the moves. The holographic pieces slid. The final move flashing red. Checkmate. A low chime echoed. A new message. Preliminary assessment complete. Docking clearance granted. Proceed to central chamber for final evaluation. The field dissolved. A brightly lit docking bay beckoned. They were in. The station's corridors were silent, sterile, vast. Their footsteps echoed in a millennial-old emptiness. Sullivan scanned with a handheld unit. It's on standby. Low power but stable. Everything's waiting. He stopped by a dead terminal, pried open a panel, and juiced it with his scanner's battery. Corrupted text flickered. Can you read it? Corval asked Varus. The Neutrix peered. It is an archaic dialect, a log fragment. He translated slowly, voice hushed. Trap. The puzzles are a lie. A filter. The final test is the live event. They demand a hands-on repair. Primary core volatile. Chain failure imminent. The rest was garbage. Sullivan stood. The last crew that got this far. They failed. Corval's face was stone. The final exam is practical. And if we fail, Sullivan finished, the station's core goes critical. Takes us with it. The central chamber was a hollow sphere kilometers wide, walls alive with glowing conduits. A point of light expanded into a massive hologram, a shifting, geometric avatar. The Proctor. Its voice was calm, dispassionate, echoing. I am the test. Your species has passed the preliminary heuristic assessments. Your methodologies are idiosyncratic, but valid. You have earned the final evaluation. A monumental schematic of the station's power core appeared, bleeding crimson warnings. Diagnose and repair the system-wide instability. Self-preservation is a secondary protocol. Core failure is an acceptable testing parameter. Failure will result in catastrophic containment breach in 19 standard minutes. A timer materialized, counting down. The schematic was a nightmare of alien physics. Varus despaired. This is theoretical art. The mathematics are transcendent. Sullivan ignored the exotic labels, focusing on energy flow, heat dissipation, system feedback. Universal principles. The design is too perfect, he whispered. No redundancies. A minor surge started a chain reaction. The system is brilliant, but brittle. Solution? Corval urged. 12 minutes left. A human engineer would have built a messy, inefficient buffer. A feedback loop. The interface resisted adding new parts. A wild, desperate idea formed. But I can reroute the problem. He pointed to a non-critical thermal system. I'll shunt the overload through here. Use it as a makeshift bleed valve. Feed the stabilized energy back and downstream. Varus was horrified. You will pump volatile energy through a low-grade thermal siphon. It is barbaric. A makeshift atrocity. It's a feedback loop, Sullivan shot back, his fingers flying. It's ugly and efficient, and it will work. He locked the final command with 5 minutes remaining. The Proctor processed a logical solution. The timer ticked. 4, 3. Your solution is suboptimal. Structurally compromised. It demonstrates a fundamental disregard for elegant design. The pause was eternal. Corval closed her eyes. Varus shrunk. It is also correct. The warning lights flashed green. System stability increased by 74%. Analysis. Robust, inelegant systems demonstrate superior survivability under anomalous stress. Your methodology is novel. Classification. Pragmatic escapologists. The timer vanished. Passage granted. As drones loaded priceless pre-Concord power converters into Vagrant, the Proctor presented a 1,000-page legal contract. Varus brightened. A standard Concord salvage accord. I shall review the liability clauses. Rejected, Corval stated, cutting him off. She addressed the Proctor. We operate under independent freighter terms. 10% finder's fee on all process materials. Exclusive salvage rights to designated non-structural components. You cover fuel costs for hauling. All liability and arbitration clauses are void. Simpler. The Proctor calculated. Your terms are logical and skewed in your favor. They're efficient. Less paperwork for you. Another endless silence. Your negotiation logic is also audacious and computationally more efficient. Terms accepted. Later, with a new, flawless FTL coil installed and a hold full of treasure, Corval poured expensive whiskey. To Sullivan Hale, the best damn puzzle solver in the black. Varus, now obsessively studying a simple pair of pliers from Sullivan's locker, muttered, "The serrated grips for ritual scarification?" Sullivan smiled, savoring the ship's new, potent hum. They had won. As the Vagrant leaped into slipstream, Varys asked his final, haunting question. "Engineer Hale, are you unique? A genetic prodigy?" Sullivan thought of Earth's billions, the chess grandmasters, the engineers, the weekend puzzle solvers. "Doc, there are billions more where I come from. Most are better at the cube than I am. We hold competitions." Dr. Elon Varys stared into infinity, his worldview dust. He wordlessly accepted the glass tour offered. But on the silent station, the Proctor's final analysis concluded. A new file opened. Transmission protocols engaged, aimed at the dark between galaxies. Subject: pragmatic escapologist species designation. Homo sapiens. Encountered. Assessment: cognitive threat paradigm invalidates all prior models. They solve existential locks with cultural toys and repair event horizons with scrap and ingenuity. Define intelligence not as computational power, but as adaptive, pragmatic recursion. Conclusion: not a nascent species. A wildcard variable. Recommendation: immediate elevation to galactic red list. Containment priority: maximum. Message ends. The Vagrant sped toward a brighter, infinitely more dangerous future, unaware that the greatest puzzle, survival in a galaxy now watching with wary, calculating eyes, was just beginning. If humanity's greatest weapon is turning puzzles into weapons, share the story. The next test won't be on a board.